Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be reading the story of Gulnara. To be wise has many meanings. Sometimes being wise means using your wits. In The Carrot Counter, a story that's been told in Bohemia for 400 years, Princess Emma escapes from a wicked magician when she tricks him into counting every carrot in his field twice. Molly Whuppie, an English heroine, outsmarts a giant 3 times. As a reward, she gets to marry the king's son. In Not Driving, Not Riding, a story from Norway, a clever princess earns her royal crown by solving the prince's riddle. Being wise can also mean being sensible. Common sense helps the princess succeed in the Russian tale Vasilisa the Wise. A few centuries ago, a wise woman was one who studied the stars and knew both charms and cures. Although that kind of wise woman appears in the next story, it is Princess Gulnara who shows the most wisdom. Gulnara is a tale from Arabian Nights. These stories, more than 1,000 years old, were probably the first told in India. Legend credits Scheherazade, a Persian queen, with putting the stories together by telling a different tale every night for 1,000 days and nights. Scheherazade entertained the Sultan and saved her own life, and that was certainly wise. In Arabia, 1,000 years ago, there was a ruler named Shah Kanu. The Shah was just and treated his subjects fairly, from the wealthiest silk merchant to the poorest camel boy. To know his people better, Kanu sometimes disguised himself and wandered unnoticed through the crowded city streets. One summer afternoon, when the air was hot and heavy with dust, he stopped at a well to drink. 3 sisters were there, talking as they filled their water jugs. "Last night I dreamed I married the Shah's baker," said the oldest sister, "and I ate all the honey cakes I wanted." "Oh," said the second sister as she shrugged, "I dreamed I married the Shah's cook and ordered every dish that I desired." "My dream was the best," the youngest of the 3 declared, "for in it I married Shah Kanu himself and had children as bright as the sun." The sisters giggled at their foolishness, but the Shah nodded his head and thoughtfully. Soon after, Shah Kanu sent for the 3 sisters. The frightened maidens knelt before his throne, face to the floor. "You know me not," said the Shah, "yet I know your heart's desires." He pointed to the oldest sister. Today you shall have your wish and marry the royal baker. "Tomorrow you shall wed my cook," he told the second sister. Then, smiling, he took the youngest sister by her hand, "and in 2 days' time I shall make you my wife and my queen." Since the Shah's word was law of the land, all 3 sisters had their dream weddings. But soon the older girls tired of being married to a mere baker and a lowly cook. They envied their sister, a queen in a palace of pink marble, and schemed ways to spoil her happiness. Before the year was out, the queen bore a son. Her older sisters attended her and snatched the baby before she even saw him. Putting the boy in a basket, they sent him adrift in the stream that flowed past the palace. "The little prince is dead," the sisters told the Shah. "He never drew the breath of life." When he heard this, Shah Kanu wiped tears from his eyes. But the prince was far from dead. His lusty cries frightened the fish, scattered the swans, and caught the ear of the Shah's gardener. That old man pulled the basket from the brook and hastened home with the baby. "Praise Allah," he cried to his wife. "He has sent us a son." The gardener and his wife named their newfound baby Bahman and loved him as their own. The very next year, the queen gave birth to another boy, and a few minutes later to a girl as well. Again, her 2 sisters attended her. Those wicked women hid these babies in a basket too, and sent it downstream like the first. "Twins," the sister told Shah Kanu. But alas, neither lived. "You have lost another prince and a princess also." The Shah tore his hair and rubbed his face with ashes. In his grief, he accused the queen. "You are to blame for this misery," he raged. "Begone from my sight." The youngest sister was banished, sent to live in a mud-walled hut scarcely bigger than a dovecote. As before, the Shah's gardener found the basket with the babies. "Allah has blessed us again and again," he exclaimed. The old man and his wife named the second prince Perviz and the princess Gulnara. For more than a dozen years, they cared tenderly for the 3 children. They taught them to write poems and do sums, to play the lute and ride horses. But the old couple could not tell the children where they came from, for they did not know themselves. Then, quite suddenly, the gardener and his wife took ill and died. From that day on, the children looked after each other. One day, while the princes were hunting pigeons for the cookpot, a wandering wise woman called on Gulnara. "Please, child, I need food to eat and a rug to rest on." "I will gladly share with you, grandmother," said Gulnara. Gulnara spread her soft mat on the floor so that the woman could kneel and say her prayers. She picked a melon from the garden and fetched bread from the outdoor oven. The wise woman ate as if she had not tasted food since the last full moon. When she was done, she put her hand on Gulnara's head. "In return for your kindness," she said, "I shall tell you 3 marvels. The first is a tree whose leaves never fall and which grows lovelier with every season." Gulnara nodded. "The second is water that shines like gold. 1 drop fills a fountain and it never runs dry." Gulnara smiled. "The third is a bird with song so sweet that every other bird joins in and," the old woman whispered, "this songbird can speak words as well." Gulnara jumped up. "I would like to hear that for myself." "Follow the camel track that leads to India," the wise woman directed, and then she disappeared through the low archway. When her 2 brothers returned, Gulnara repeated what her visitor had said. "I must find the tree, the golden water, and the wondrous bird," she exclaimed. "No, little sister," said Bahman. "Such a quest is not fitting for a girl. I will get them for you." Gulnara said nothing, and Perviz saddled the swift-paced stallion for his brother. Before he left, Bahman put his dagger on the table. "As long as this blade is bright, I am well," he said. Then Bahman jumped on his horse and galloped down the caravan trail toward India. When he arrived, when he traveled for 16 days and nights, he saw a tall mountain looming before him. On its slopes grew a forest of black rocks. At its base sat an ancient hermit, thoughtfully wrapping his long beard around his fingers. "Long life to you, old uncle," said Bahman. "Can you tell me where to find the tree of seasons, the gold water, and the sweet singing bird?" "On the crest of yonder mountain," the hermit replied. "But those who climb it do not come down again." "Warnings do not frighten me." "Then go," the hermit sighed, "but neither look back at the rocks, nor pay mind to their jeers." Bahman tethered his horse and started on foot up the steep mountain. The path twisted in and out among the black rocks, and a huge boulder broke loose, almost crushing him. As the stone rolled past, it rumbled, "You will be next!" Forgetting the hermit's words, Bahman spun about and shook his fist, and he became a black rock too. At home, the dagger on the table turned rusty red. "Bahman is in danger," cried Perviz. "I must help him." "Take me with you," begged Gulnara. "Since I told him of the 3 magical things, I am to blame." "No, little sister," Perviz patted her arm. "The journey is too dangerous for you." He laid a string of pearls beside the dagger. "As long as the strand is unbroken, I am well." Then Perviz saddled his stout-hearted mare and trotted down the camel track toward India. He rode for 21 days and nights before he came to the mountain of black rocks. He saw Bahman's stallion grazing there, and beside the horse sat the hermit. The old man gave Perviz the same advice he had given to his older brother. But Perviz, even more determined than Bahman, slid off the mare and scrambled up the mountain anyway. He zigzagged between the giant rocks, never looking behind him. "Mouse boy," the black rocks jeered. "Worthless son of a worthless father." Perviz ignored their taunts until he heard, "Your brother is a weakling and a coward." "Liar," said Perviz. That one word turned him to stone. At home, the string of pearls broke and scattered on the floor. Gulnara knew what she must do. She filled a sack with dates, climbed on her short-legged pony, and started down the caravan road. For 35 days she jogged through a sea of sand beneath a fiery sun. For 35 nights she shivered beneath frosty stars. At last the black rocks loomed before her like a crowd of demons. She left her pony beside the mare and stallion. Like Bahman and Perviz, Gulnara heard the hermit's advice. Unlike her brothers, she let nothing distract her. So as not to forget and turn her head, she wound a scarf about her neck. To muffle any voices, she stopped her ears with wool. To keep from crying out, she stuffed her cheeks with dates. Only then was she ready. Slowly, Gulnara picked her way up the mountain. Thorns snagged her clothes, and a landslide of stones made her stumble. She heard mocking laughter even through the wool, and voices that grew louder until all the rocks seemed to be shouting at her at once. They scoffed at her brothers and scorned Gulnara, saying, "Shame, shame! Go home, useless girl!" She did not answer. She stared straight ahead and put one foot after the other until she reached the top of the mountain. Once there, Gulnara looked about in disbelief. There was no tree of all seasons, only a leafless branch. There was no golden water, only a dirty puddle. A bird, feathers drooping, huddled in a cage, but its song was no more than a chirp. There is no magic here. Tears stung Gulnara's eyes, nor my brothers here either. The path was slippery and Gulnara stumbled. Water splashed from the cup onto the black rocks. The stones sizzled and steamed as the drops struck them, and the air swirled with mist. When it cleared, Gulnara saw that a man stood where each rock had been. From rock to rock, sprinkling magic water everywhere, she ran. Two of the bigger boulders became Baman and Perviz. Soon hundreds of stones, large and small, had human forms again. The grateful men marched after Gulnara as if she were a general. "Go," she told them, "you are free men again." Gulnara, Baman, and Perviz rode home, with Gulnara holding the cup in the branch and with the bird cage tied to her saddle. "What good are a stick, a sick bird, and an empty cup?" asked her brothers. "We shall see," Gulnara replied. When they reached their cottage, Gulnara hurried into the garden. She poured the last drop of muddy water into a basin. It spouted up in a fountain, shining like gold in the sunlight. She planted the branch in the ground. The next morning it was bursting with blossoms. She hung the bird cage from a limb. The bird fluffed its feathers and began to trill so lovely a melody that songbirds from larks to the lowest, smallest sparrows joined in. Word of this marvelous garden spread throughout the countryside. Shah Kanu, dressed as a beggarman, came to see for himself. The three children welcomed the shabby stranger. "What a splendid tree!" he exclaimed. "Even the Shah has nothing so fine." When he heard the bird, he told them, not even the Shah has such a sweet-voiced songbird." He tasted the water from the golden fountain and declared, "No nectar is so refreshing." He gazed at Baman, Perviz, and Gulnara and added, "The Shah was never so fortunate as to have children like you." At that, the bird stopped singing and chirruped, "He has, if he will but believe his eyes." Amazed, they stared at the bird. The Shah found his voice first. "I understand your words, but not your meaning." The bird explained how the queen's sisters stole the babies and how the gardener had found them and raised them. "That's what I saw from the palace roof," it said. "Now you can see for yourself." The Shah blinked. All three children were as bright as the sun, and Gulnara was the image of her mother, the queen. I am Shah Kanu, your father," he said, pulling the tattered hood from his head. "I ask your forgiveness." The brothers bowed and nodded their heads, but Gulnara answered wisely, "You must seek pardon from the queen first." On seeing Baman, Perviz, and Gulnara, the queen was too full of joy to have room for anger. All of them lived happily in the pink marble palace, except for the queen's sisters. Those two dared not show their faces anywhere in Arabia again.